Hey folks, it's a windy day out here in Nebraska. We are going to cook some soup tonight for dinner. So I'm going to show you one of my favorite recipes. So we're out here at the wicking tub that we put the video on, I don't know how long ago. You can go back and look. Had to be a month or two ago. So we're out here in our kale tub, kale and spinach. And the kale is doing wonderful. Tub's nice and moist. I've only watered this tub in the time that we've been growing it 3 times, and when I watered it last night, remember you got to wait until the water comes out of this little hole right here. It immediately came out of that hole when I put the hose in this tube. So really I've only watered this twice since we got it going. And you can see we got a big nice basket of kale here. So we're going to make some kale soup. When you cut this kale, just because we harvested it does not mean we're done. We cut all the outer leaves off, the bigger stuff, and you can see all these inner leaves are still growing. So this kale is going to keep producing for you. So we made it into the kitchen. Not much wind in here, it's a lot nicer. So we got our kale, looking real good. It's nice young kale, shouldn't be bitter because it's still early in the season. So being from a Portuguese family, I ate kale soup a lot growing up. It's called sopa de couve in Portuguese, or some people just call it couve for kale soup. And it's pretty straightforward. It's got, some chicken broth, potatoes, the kale, some spices. We'll put some garlic in there and put some thyme in there. And normally it's got a Portuguese sausage called linguiça, but linguiça is not available in our new home state. They've pretty much never even heard of it out here in Nebraska. So I'm going to figure out a way to get it. I do know how to make it, but it's like a 3 or 4 day process. But Kelly is not really a sausage aficionado. So we're going to replace the sausage with bacon today. So we're going to get the bacon out and we're going to get it going in this pot. So we've got the bacon rendering in there. We cut it into like 1-inch pieces because I do want a nice little bite-sized pieces since we're not putting the sausage. Now we did find this bacon here in Nebraska that we really like. It's called Daily, and we get the Applewood smoked thick cut bacon. Super good. We love it. So we're going to render this down, and while we're doing this, we're going to wash up our kale and remove some of the stems because we don't want so many of the stems, but they are edible if you want to throw them in. Alright, we got our kale in the sink, got cold water in here. Going to run it around just like we do all of our vegetables when we pick them out of the garden. It's going to break loose any debris, any dirt, heavy, it's going to fall to the bottom. Anything we see floating up to the top we'll take out of there, and then we'll pull all this out and we'll put it in the drainer and we'll let it drip dry. It doesn't have to get too dry because it's not going to be like salad, it's going to be going in soup. So. And then over here we've got 4 Yukon Gold potatoes. I like to use Yukon Gold because unlike a russet, you don't have that dirty outer skin, and I don't even peel them because there's a lot of vitamins in the skin. And we got a big yellow onion we're going to chop up. And while I'm doing that, that bacon is still rendering. So we're going to start pulling this kale out and we'll come back in a little bit. Alright, our bacon is fairly brown, pretty much rendered out. We're going to go ahead and add our onions, 1 chopped onion. And we're going to sweat that onion out a little bit so it turns kind of translucent. And then this is the only aromatics that we're going to add to this. I don't use carrots and celery in my kale soup. I just never had it in there, so we're not going to use it. So after the onions sweat out a little bit, we're going to add our chicken stock, and then once that comes to a boil, we're going to add our cubed up potato. So we got a pretty good sweat going. We have our beautiful Yukon Gold potatoes all ready to go. So we're going to go over here to our little redneck hydroponic system over here, and we're going to cut some thyme to go into our soup. Good looking fresh stuff. So you take your thyme and you just strip it backwards off of the stem, and it pulls the leaves right off. We'll do that and we'll get it in there. So we got about 4 small sprigs of thyme in there that we've stripped. You don't want that to cook too long. You just want to get it to release some of the oils out of it. So now we're going to add our chicken broth. And I'm using store-bought chicken broth. If you have some chicken base, you can use that and add some water to it. And I haven't made any chicken broth because we don't raise meat chickens. But when I cook chicken, I keep the bones, and I'll make like a chicken soup or something the next day. I'll boil the bones down and use the leftover chicken meat from whatever meal we had the night before. So we got 2 quarts of chicken broth in there. And we're going to stir that up a little bit. I mean, how can you go wrong with these ingredients? Pretty straightforward. I'm not going to add a lot of salt right now, but I am going to add some pepper. Now, some crushed red pepper would be fantastic in here, but Kelly not liking a lot of heat, I'm just going to go with some black pepper, probably about a 1/4 teaspoon or so. And we're going to get some crushed garlic and throw in here. So here's our crushed garlic. I use the Christopher Ranch brand because it's canned, so it takes a little bit of the bitterness out of the garlic. It turns it nice and sweet. So I got a little teaspoon here. You can figure that's about 3 cloves. That's what you're kind of eyeballing. And again, you can make it your own, just like I say with all my recipes. You can add more garlic or less. Doesn't matter. Whatever your flavor taste profile that you prefer, go with it. So we're going to bring this to a boil, and then we're going to add our potatoes. And I want to talk a little bit about potatoes. So go down the root cellar. I pull these potatoes out, and they're starting to sprout. Their eyes are starting to grow. You don't need to throw these potatoes away. Check your potatoes. They're still firm. They're still good. Just knock those little eyes off and wash them up. They're good to go. Now, I've pulled out the potatoes that I'm going to use for dinner. I generally plan on 1 potato per person, so this soup will feed about 4 people. And even when I'm cooking like potatoes for breakfast, I'll do like 1 potato per person. But the rest of these potatoes, since we're not probably going to have potatoes in the next few days or probably the next week, I'm going to take these and plant them in the garden. And each one of these potatoes is probably going to make you about 4 or 5 pounds of more potatoes. And anybody that tells you store-bought potatoes won't grow in the garden, they're lying to you. They grow just fine. And when we do our garden tour, I will show you some store-bought potatoes growing in the garden. So our stock in our pot was boiling. So we threw in our potatoes, and of course that takes it back below a boil again. So we are going to cook this until these potatoes are tender and ready to eat. And then we're going to throw in our kale and cook it down, and then we'll be just about done. I've liberated the kale greens from the stalks. My grandmother's looking down on me right now, disappointed that I'm throwing these stalks away, because she would have cooked them up. And even my mom's probably, when she watches this video, why did you throw that away? I'll be getting a phone call. But if you want these stalks in your soup, just line them all up, cut them up like celery or something. Throw them in just after the onions and kind of cook them down so they're not woody and you don't get that weird texture. But you can do it. Back in the day, that's what the peasants ate. If your mom or your grandma worked for a, highfalutin person in town in their kitchen, that's what they'd bring home and make for dinner for their family. Or if they're peeling potatoes, they'd peel them a little deep, and they'd take those potato skins home and put them in soup or fry them up. If they're peeling apples, they'd peel those a little bit deep, and they'd take those home and make apple peel pie. And that's what they lived on. That's what they fed their family with. So that's where all this comes from. People being real frugal. My mom has literally dug stuff out of my trash can at my house and cleaned it up and took it home because she just could not see it going to waste. And don't deny it. You've done it. I seen you. Now some people will look at this pile of kale and look at this pot that we got going on and say, that is not all going to fit. Well, it will. it cooks down. If you've ever cooked greens before or cabbage or anything like that, they cook down quite a bit. So you need quite a good mess about that big to make whatever you're making, whether it be collard greens or whatever. You're going to need quite a mess of them. Potatoes are simmering. We're almost there. Boy, I wish you could smell this. It smells amazing. So let's talk about some options. We didn't put the linguiça in there, but you could try other sausage. A linguiça sausage is made with wine. So if you could find something that's got some wine in it, would probably be a good substitution. Chorizo might be a good substitution. Just don't get the crazy spicy greasy chorizo, kind of like they sell at the Hispanic markets. If they have a meat counter and make their own, that's probably better than the stuff that comes in those tubes. It's a little gross and it kind of smells bad when you cook it. I make my own chorizo, so I could use that. And if it doesn't come in a tube, say you get it from the meat counter, just make like little meatballs with it and drop those right into the soup. Make sure they're not too big, maybe about a quarter size, and let them cook right in the soup and they'll be fine. Make it however you want. If you don't like sausage, again, use the bacon or something else. If you don't like kale, and even if you don't like kale, I suggest you try this, because myself, I'm not a raw kale fan. I don't like kale raw, but cooked kale is good. So give kale a try cooked. If you don't like it raw, try it cooked and see if you change your mind. You can use any green in this soup. You could use chard, you could use cabbage, you could use anything that's green in here. Spinach, whatever you want. Okay, the potatoes were fork tender, so it's time to put the kale in. So all of that kale that was on the counter went into that pot. And we put a lid on it. And by putting the lid on it, once that comes back up to a boil, that steam's going to help wilt down those greens, and they're all going to go down into that soup. And you'll be amazed at what happened to that big old pile of kale. Alright, where did all that kale go? We brought it up to a boil, and now we've turned it down to a simmer. It's barely bubbling. So I did a taste test, and it needed a little salt, and I knew it would because of all the potatoes in there. Anytime you're putting potatoes in a dish, it requires a lot of salt to bring the flavor up. I'll let you in on a little secret too, a little trade secret. If something needs salt, sometimes the people that are in the know, they won't use the salt. They will add the powdered chicken bouillon because it's got a lot of sodium in it, and it also adds a lot of flavor. So you can try that. If your dish needs salt, try throwing some of that in there, and it'll kick it up a notch. You won't be disappointed. So we're going to let this simmer just a little bit. I'll do a final tasting, and then we're going to do another little trick I'm going to show you. So as it sits right now, this soup is fantastic and will knock your socks off. But if you want to go to the next level, we can add just a little bit of acid to brighten it up, just a little bit. So acidic stuff, you're talking about lemon juice, lime juice, vinegars, stuff like that. Now, I personally stay away from like balsamic or apple cider vinegar because I don't want to add any sweetness to this. I like it more savory. So I would use lemon juice, lime juice would be great. And I'm just going to use a little bit of white vinegar. And you're not going to do very much. You're going to do about a teaspoonful. That's about it. And you can try it after you do that. If you think you want a little bit more, you put a little bit more. So that's all there is to it. You're just going to brighten it up just a little bit. But like I said, you don't have to. It's fantastic just all on its own. So we're going to stir this up a little bit, and then we're going to let it cool off, because right now it'll burn your face off if you try to eat it. And we're going to dig in. We're going to have to pull the reins on the tummy tonight so we don't eat this whole pot. Kelly's in the house now. She went out and mowed the whole 3 acres of lawn after working all day on her Friday. How's the soup, babe?
Really, really good.
Ooh, yeah. She's not even Portuguese and she likes it. We're also having some of Kelly's homemade sourdough bread. Well, that was a good dinner. crazy good. That is all that's left. We each had 2 big helpings of it. Couldn't get enough. So we hope you try some kale. If you don't like it raw, try it cooked. Try this soup. You will love it. Very, very yummy. Brought me back quite a ways with all those flavors. So give it a shot. I think it'll be your new favorite soup. We'll see you back here next time on Mark Kelly Farm. We love you guys.